What's up, guys? It's been 24 hours since I slept. I'm still feeling great. Let's get started with this video. Today I'm going to do a quick little video on signs that he or she is disinterested in you. Now, first off, I want to put out the disclaimer that this is not one of the normal cookie cutter videos on YouTube where the guy or the girl talks to the camera and gives these little bullet point tips, because that's not how it works in real life. I'm going to tell you the real truth. These are guidelines, okay? I'm going to do the same thing, but let me elaborate. The truth of the matter is that people are different. Not only on the outside, but on the inside. They are different shades of the rainbow. An infinite spectrum, you could say. And there's going to be so many different outliers and people with different tastes, and it's so subjective, and they have their own quirks, whether it be due to childhood memories or suppressed subconscious memories or whatever, that all factor into these quirky little differences in each and every person, along with their genetics, which they're born with. And therefore, you're going to get these people, like I've said before, who contradict these signs, no matter what sign you throw out there. And that's why I always want to give you the disclaimer, because you never want to end up in situations where I'm just like, you know what if I had, been more forward? Do you think I would have had a chance? Because I never really tried that much. Now, nowadays that doesn't really happen that much, but it's still somewhat irksome. Usually it's because I've already sort of tried, but it wasn't a good try. It was sort of just like an indirect, comment, small talk for like a couple seconds, and then, you're like, oh, how did that go? But that in itself can tell you quite a lot, because that's the first one. If they're not really putting in the effort to talk back to you, and they're not, staying to talk to you, whether it's after class or when you bump into each other, maybe you're not in school anymore, and you bump into each other or something, and you could both stand there and chat for a while, and that other person, whether it's a boy or girl, decides to leave, then there's usually only two reasons. One, she's nervous, and she likes you, but she's nervous, and so she's leaving because the long conversation scares her and she doesn't know if she can continue it. The other reason is because she's just not interested. She doesn't want to talk. She knows what's going on. She knows you like her because your body language shows it. Or if you're a girl, same thing, he knows you like her because your body language is either really thirsty for a girl, or for a guy it's usually thirsty in a different sort of way, where you're just more, a little bit too into wanting to talk to her, and she can just immediately tell. Then I'm afraid she chose to leave the conversation early. If you're engaging in conversation and she's got that look on her face that's just like, yep, okay, I'm gonna go now, thanks for talking, bye, then, there's so many little things that you can tell. The tone of the voice is one, the body language, and here you're gonna hear these things and you're gonna remember them, and then what's gonna happen is typically you're gonna experience it, and then despite all these things clicking on a list, you might just be like, but maybe they're still interested. And I'm not gonna lie, that's happened to me before myself. But you guys got to either figure out the signs, or just screw it all and go hardcore and get rejected. Or maybe you could be wrong and you could be accepted. Which brings me back to the main point, which is that there's so many different people out in this world, and sometimes it doesn't really freaking matter about all these little signs that you're throwing about to make sure she's interested or he's interested before you go in or be more forward with the person. Sometimes you will never know because it's just cloudy, or you are just subconsciously convincing yourself you still have a chance which I still do from time to time, and there's really no way for you to really move on or get the message until you go hard. And sometimes I've chickened out and not gone hard, and even though I know she probably didn't like me, I still, if I could return to that situation, I would have, at least tried harder or made it more clear, because you end up never seeing them again. And it's much better to be like, well, I tried for sure and I made it as clear as possible, and I made her express to me as clear as possible if she was interested or not, rather than this what if scenario where you never see the girl again. Now obviously it's different if you're in one of those social circle settings where you're constantly or reoccurringly seeing this girl again, and you're sure you will for the next year or 2 years or 3 years. But if it's just 1 year, I mean, that year or that semester can go pretty darn quickly. But here's the biggest point that I want to stress. If you listen to these cookie color signs of disinterest or interest you see online, you may be screwed over, because like I've said before, what if the girl is the exception and follows the opposite? So you're checking off your list like, okay, she has to give me eye contact at least twice every minute or something like that, or sustained eye contact. And there are girls out there who have admitted, either on YouTube or from what I've read on Reddit, where they're like, you know what, I'm just a girl who's really shy. So when I really like a guy, I will refrain any eye contact at all, and I will do everything in my power to make sure he doesn't know I'm interested. That means not talking to him, maybe even acting mean towards him, or just an ice queen towards him. And you could be that guy who's, checking off all these things, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, she's not passing any of these things, and when I talk to her, she's giving off all these signs of disinterest. Maybe she's not interested, when in reality, she's just really shy and nervous, and she doesn't want to be embarrassed, and that's why she's giving off all these signs of disinterest. And that sort of stuff happens. Don't ask me why. Some girls are just freaking, counterintuitive, and they screw themselves over. It's like, why can't we all just be very simple and just go up to people like the freaking penguins in that movie? What was that movie called? Happy Feet, where every male and female would just like go up to each other and they'd be like, "Do you like me? Do you like me?" And the girl would be like, "No," and then the guy would just move on to the next one in the group, and it'd be like thousands of penguins just moving about until they found like a pairing where both of them like each other. But no, humans, for whatever reason, are different. They can't just do that. I guess society has, conditioned us to this sort of embarrassment when we get rejected. I just think it'd be a lot easier if we're just like freaking penguins doing that stuff. But that's pretty much all I want to say. As you can tell, I really only gave one sign of disinterest, but I can give you more. But the gist of it is more important, which I've already reiterated time and time again. So rather than repeating that once again, I'm going to just end this video with a few more guidelines for disinterest. And I would say, they're pretty obvious, and sometimes you want to follow them. But like, what truly is the point of, looking at these signs? It's, in my opinion, just a way of avoiding embarrassment or screwing up some sort of, potential salvaged friendship from it, which can be beneficial at times, but I personally believe a true friend would do that anyways, and they would respect you for being honest. So sometimes you will never know, because it's always so murky, and no matter what you do, the girl may want to keep it that way, and you'll never know for sure based off these signs. And so sometimes it's just better to go for it. Not always though. And most of the time, if she likes you, she will make it pretty obvious, and the rest will take care of itself. But just from experience, generally there are some reoccurring themes. The girl, immediately as soon as you start talking to her, will look at her phone. If she has something that important, which is highly unlikely, she won't even be there standing with you anymore. She'd be rushing off to help her, mom who has just gotten in a car accident. Usually she's on her phone because she's not interested, and she has yet to leave the situation physically, either out of respect or politeness, or simply because she hasn't realized that she could do that yet. But that's one clear sign. As for the guy, he may do the phone thing, but probably not as much. Guys don't use their phones like girls do as much. So he may just answer your questions, but the eye contact, the attention really just focused elsewhere. And again, with a guy, you kind of have to be careful, because some guys will mess around with this. They'll pretend that they're disinterested to play, not necessarily play games with you, but just not come across so desperate or whatever other reason. Another clear sign: you talk to her, her body language is off. She's not facing you, she's not open to you. Listen to the tone of her voice or his voice. If it's curt, if it's fast, if you get very short replies, disinterested, monotone replies. Or more importantly though, you have to measure these sort of things, you have to gauge it towards how you see her act on average with other people. If she's very animated and open and happy, and then she sees you and she's just disinterested and bored and annoyed, and you can tell that by her body language and like her voice. And sometimes it's not that obvious, it's just like neutral, but towards that direction. You really have to gauge it with like other things and other factors. And so I can go on and on about this. Typically it's usually the phone or the excuse like, oh, I gotta go. But again, that could be out of nervousness. And then I guess the final thing would just be them always sort of not even trying at all. And again, you have to gauge it on the person. If he's a shy person, if he's naturally monotone, then that you can throw this all out the window. But if this guy you can see has enough social skill and he could ask you questions back or engage you in conversation, and he's not asking you questions. Long story short, guys, if they're making a clear sign that they are not interested in continuing conversation, or they're just not really trying too hard, and you can tell by their facial expression and body language that they're not nervous, because there's only two pathways really. They're shy or nervous, or they're disinterested, or they're in a bad mood, but usually it's those first two. Then you can pretty much move on from there. And I definitely would recommend trying it at least a couple times, so that means like 2 or 3 or 4 before you're absolutely sure, because sometimes they're just having a really bad day and then you misinterpret it, or sometimes you give up after the first attempt. And I remember doing this recently, and it wasn't that big a deal because it was like just a random girl, but looking back I realized, okay, I was reading too much into her body language, and she was just that sort of monotone, neutral face girl, and that was your first interaction with her, so you took out too much from the interaction, and in reality she could have been quite interested, and that was just her normal personality. So that's all I really wanted to say. You really have to gauge it, and if you're going all out and you don't mind being rejected and potentially losing a relationship, why not, try a few more times to be absolutely certain? Because I'm not the best at, deciding, and sometimes even if I know deep down she's not interested, part of me still just won't give up hope until I really make it clear to her, and she has to make it very clear to me whether she's interested or not. And I think this is just me, just not being that, you know, good at analyzing it, and maybe I never will be, and so I make up for it in other ways. And that's not to say I'm that good at it, because oftentimes I will, just either out of being polite or wanting to uh, just leave it at that, so as to not offend the girl or annoy the girl too much. I'll just end it there and just leave that sort of lingering what if question, even if I'm not completely sure. Anyhow, as always, like, favorite, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Peace.